the Week 2 slate breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo. With me is Russell Clay, taking a look game by game at the Sunday main slate. Coming off of a pretty disastrous Week 1. I mean, outside the Monday night games, I feel like salvaged a really bad week of just watching football.
Well, a disastrous week. I would disagree. I had a
nice week. Yeah,
I had a fun week. But overall, I think this is more of a macro thing that we're starting to see in the NFL, which is that a lot of these quarterbacks that were the best are getting older, and some of them are regressing. Carson Palmer, Eli Manning, Joe Flacco, and they're not being replaced by anyone. I mean, we didn't get to see Jameis Winston this week or last week, and Mariota was okay. Mariota and Carr are really good, but when Tom Brady leaves, which should be in the next 5 years, when some of these older passers kind of get out of the league, who are we looking at? And then we got some really special running backs that are taking over. So I'm really excited because I want to see ground and pound back. Like, I want to see running backs get 25 touches a game again. But yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at this yet, but I would guess if you looked across this week 1 in terms of total passing yards, we're way down from what we've seen the last 10 years. Like, I'd bet in the last 15 years, this was probably the lowest passing yardage. You know what I mean? Total.
Dude, give me it back to a fantasy time where I can play Larry Johnson and Sean Alexander and LaDainian Tom. Like, give me back that era. That was such a fun era.
Didn't you feel a little nostalgia watching Kareem Hunt on Thursday? Like, oh, man, I remember this. That's what LaDainian Tomlinson used to do every week.
Dude, he looked good. I mean,
not that good. Clearly, I don't think Kareem Hunt, fall for the hype all you want. He's still a relatively average athlete who was a very prolific running back at a small school, but third rounder. So let's wait. Leonard Fournette, we do not have to wait. Anyway, let's get into it.
Let's go here. Baltimore-Cleveland first game. You look at Baltimore, 8-point favorites. One of the lower totals, obviously, on the week. Baltimore ran the ball 40-plus times last week. It was just the perfect game flow for basically that defense and, those running backs. And what are you looking at here without Danny Woodhead, who's likely going to hit the IR?
Well, first, let's throw something out there. Baltimore took Andy Dalton's lunch money. If we were in, we just go to the childhood, schoolyard every time we make an analogy on here. So let's go to the lunchroom. Andy Dalton was just sitting there, minding his own business. He kind of got stressed out because he didn't do well on his geography quiz, but he's fine. All right, I'll study hard for the test. And, he's just sitting there. And, big bad CJ Mosley just comes, grabs him by his collar and just says, "Give me your money." And he's like, "I don't want to give you my money. And he's like, "Yeah, you said my money." And he was like, "No, I didn't." And then the analogy falls apart. But the point is that Baltimore's defense is not something I'm going to be targeting pretty much the rest of the year. So I love Corey Coleman. I thought really positive signs. I'm not touching any Browns. I think Baltimore is probably the top defense on the board this week. But yeah, I'm not touching any Browns. I can tell you that. If you want to break down Baltimore's side of things, I just think it's really important to emphasize when you see something like that early on, that dominant, on the road. I think we need to recognize Baltimore's D this year.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, they were a top 10 team in takeaways last year, and they've jumped off already in 2017 with 5. This was a Cleveland team. I still think they have one of the better lines, but Deshaun Kaiser he held onto the ball far too long, and that's been a mistake here. And if Baltimore kind of gets to that again, I mean, that's the other potential for sacks because Kaiser's a rookie. He's going on the road. Those mistakes are going to be there. And Baltimore's a team, I mean, it's just another tough AFC defense where they're going to punish them.
Man. Yeah, if you guys watched any of that Baltimore Bengals game, or even if you just saw it on game, what's it called?
Red Zone.
It was a debacle. So, and that's a good offense. That's a good Bengals offense. Don't forget about that. So, yeah, I don't love this game in general.
With Woodhead out, I mean, there's a lot. We're going to be kind of going game through game, and there's a lot of running back situations where it's just kind of up in the air as far as touches go. From what I've seen, I mean, Buck Allen is going to be a guy. I mean, they ran 40 plus times last week, and I expect him to run more because, like you said, I mean, Flacco really isn't the guy who's going to air it out anymore. It might kind of, come a little bit more, both sided this week. So I don't think it's going to be as heavy, but this is another situation. I mean, over touchdown favorites. Buck Allen's a cheap guy. The problem is there's a lot of cheap other running backs that I don't mind using who have clearer roles.
Like, could you play Brashad Perriman at 31? Sure. Could you play Macklin at 5? Sure. I mean, these are contrarian plays. Mike Wallace at 39, fine. But I'm not, I don't love this game at all.
No, I don't see the need to really go there this week. And Cleveland's front seven actually looked pretty good in week 1.
So, I think this is kind of a stay away game, except hammer Baltimore D.
Yeah. Let's talk Carolina-Buffalo. Carolina back at home. They did not impress me week 1 with San Francisco. Obviously, anytime you get those East Coast teams going all the way to the West, it creates a little bit of an issue. Carolina, 25 team total. Buffalo, 18. This one, I don't see a lot of potential really on either side for anyone that really stands out to me.
Luke Kuechly's back. San Francisco isn't a great offense with many talented players, but I do think they're more organized this year. I think they're actually not going to be as bad as they looked. So I think the Panthers D is going to be pretty good this year, especially at home. So I'm off Buffalo. I'm in the crowd that thinks they're tanking. You can play Charles Clay at 3K if he plays. I'm not really loving any of the receivers, though. I don't love McCoy at his price. I think he's okay, but again, I think Carolina's going to be, in a good defensive place this year, especially with the way Carolina's kind of playing keep away. Could be a bad game flow situation for McCoy. So I guess I'm being a little negative so far on this slate. Christian McCaffrey kind of getting a lot of touches, but not something I'm totally interested in as a cash play or anything like that. Same thing with Stewart, although I do think he's a little more interesting with price considered. But I can't do the Carolina passing game right now with the way Cam looks. So I'm going to have to say no from me, dog, at this game as well.
There was one receiver that stood out to me on Buffalo's side. Pierre Garçon got his against Carolina. That was about it for San Francisco. That was about it in week 1 for San Francisco. Jordan Matthews, obviously he only saw 3 targets. He caught 2 for about 63 yards. He's only 3,900 on DK. I think he's somewhat interesting if you're playing like 1 p.m. only and you're looking for a wide receiver 3. I for some reason I could see him being a little bit more involved in this offense because it really was get the ball to McCoy, get the ball to Clay because that's what the Jets allowed. Like there was no need to really just gun and throw the ball. And like you said, I mean, Carolina, the game flow, I think for Newton in that passing game, it's a turnoff and just for opposing teams as well. So, I mean, looking at the total, I mean, yeah, Carolina's is 25. I'll play some Graham Gano. That's probably my preferred play from Carolina, and that's it.
I mean, I still like targeting Buffalo's offense. I just don't think they really have much to offer. Obviously, they have a good run scheme, but I'll take Panthers D. As you mentioned, Gano. What's your take on Olsen and Kelvin Benjamin? Because I was kind of interested in them last week and kind of interested in them in terms of ownership percentages. I kind of like them as values. I'm not sure they're as good of values, especially on the Benjamin side of things, as I want them to be. What's your take there?
I'm kind of off of Olsen just in a yearly sense. So I don't know how much I'll be targeting on a week-to-week basis. There's actually a lot of cheap tight ends once again this week. I know Ertz got moved up a lot on DK, but I think this is a Gronk week too, so I'm going to be kind of looking at him. But we'll mention some tight ends going forward, but to rattle off a few, Jared Cook, Martellus Bennett, Cameron Brate are all really cheap DK punts. So I'm not necessarily looking to go that route. I think if I'm making a pay up, it's going to be Gronk.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, this is another game. I mean, I think if you're playing 1 p.m. slates, you can take stabs at Kelvin. You can take stabs at McCoy. You mentioned Jordan Matthews, probably not something I'm going to be doing, but could definitely hit, in this type of game, especially if Carolina runs away with it. But really Carolina D for me here, kind of like the last game. And I'm pretty much avoiding the rest.
Indianapolis Colts, Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, David Johnson was the victim of a week 1 injury. He's out. This is another one where the backfield is really unclear heading in. I talked about it in the touches and reports. I talked about it on salary exploitation. It's Kerwin Williams. It's Andre Ellington. I mean, we're going to get to some cheaper running backs that are just more solidified who actually aren't that far off in terms of pricing.
Yeah, I just yawned while you were talking, just thinking about the Arizona running back situation. That is not something I'll be involving myself in. You guys, there's going to be a lot of people touting Kerwin Williams, which is fine. I don't mind him. I kind of like him as a player. I just think it's so cloudy. They brought in TJ Logan. Obviously, he's on IR now, but they weren't happy with their situation behind David Johnson before the year started, and I don't think they're happy now. Let's talk about the Colts, because obviously Larry Fitzgerald still the nuts. I don't care. It was kind of an ugly week for him last week because
I think he saw 13 targets. I mean, he's going to get his.
Yeah, he's going to get his, and especially on FanDuel, where what's his price? Yeah, 6,600. I mean, that's just the nuts play again. I kind of think if Brissett plays, we were talking about this before the show. If you guys watched last week, he threw a bomb down the left sideline to Moncrief at the end of that game, kind of like hey, I'm not Scott Tolzien type of play. If he gets the starter snaps, I do think Hilton and Moncrief are in play, even against an Arizona Cardinals secondary that's clearly better than what the Rams were. I do think they're in play if Brissett plays, so that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't get behind. I mean, from what I've seen, obviously it's Wednesday night. I mean, I've seen reports that both quarterbacks are going to play. I hate those situations. I just don't know I can go that route because there's a lot of guys I actually like as far as pricing goes that we're going to move on. We're going to get into some better games here that I'm going to like more than these ones. So I'm off of the Colts, man. I just can't find any play there. But I do like Fitzgerald. I think the wide receivers that are interesting because I think they might make up for the run game with short passing game. I mean, Jared Goff torched this team. Can Carson Palmer get at least enough to do the job and get those wide receivers to value and higher? I think so.
So again, I'm just hammering the Carson Palmer needs to retire bell right now. So I think Indy's kind of a sneaky potential pick 6 team this week. I'm not saying they're a cash play, but I do think if you're doing 1 p.m. Or the main slate and if you're doing those max enters, I think you could enter 1 or 2 with Indy's D and maybe a Indy's D with like a Hilton or a Moncrief, and you're getting some weird combinations that might hit for you.
You just got to hope that offense doesn't put them in bad spots. That's ultimately what's going to sink them.
Oh, they will, especially if Tolzien. If Tolzien starts, this is totally scrapped, and we're just hammering Cardinals D. Yeah. But if Brissett plays, I think there's a little tiny smidgen of hope there.
Yeah. Is that it for you on that one?
That's it.
All right. Jacksonville, Tennessee, another kind of mediocre AFC South matchup. No Allen Robinson, done for the year. Let's talk Jacksonville here first. A home team. It's basically a pick 'em. Titans are 2-point favorites, but is Fournette back for you? Do you like him plugging him in this week with the volume that you saw week 1?
Oh yeah, 5% last week. Yeah, people want to be off him. They want to be off the Jaguars. I mean, he's going to get a little more ownership. He's 6,500 and he got 9 touches last week. That's going to be every week, even if they're down. Like, he's not game flow dependent. He's going to get those receptions. There's nobody behind him. Hammer, hammer, hammer. I'm saying hammer a lot. Hammer Fournette, 6,500 on DK. On 7,600 on FanDuel. I mean, I didn't love him last week because I thought it was a tough matchup. I'm in. I think Alan Hearns and Marquise Lee are interesting, tournament plays. If you're doing 20 lineups, if you're doing 5 lineups, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think when we look at the pricing, it kind of dictates a lot, between sites. I think for more so for running back this week, I don't mind them. I certainly don't. I think Tennessee's front seven isn't all that bad. We saw a little bit of an improvement, I guess, on the defensive side and the secondary, but any interest in guys like Marquise Lee or Alan Hearns with basically being them punt prices and no Allen Robinson?
No. Again, I mentioned it. If you're looking for tournament plays where you're making multiple lineups and multiple, 15 to 20, then I think you can throw one of each in and feel okay with it. But this is a week where we're kind of waiting and seeing who's going to hit. Keelan Cole was sort of a training camp guy there. So that's the 3-man group. We're going to probably need a few weeks to see who emerges there. So I don't really trust anything yet.
On the Tennessee side, I don't really love the matchup. We talked Jacksonville defense last week, and they proved everything that we basically talked about with their additions of Campbell up front. I know Jalen Ramsey was on the injury report. AJ Bouye. This is a really talented defense, and it showed week 1. I know it's the Houston Texans. Tennessee doesn't turn the ball over a ton, but I can just kind of see them. I don't see the upside here with really anyone in this Tennessee offense.
I don't either. And, a few things with DeMarco Murray's pricing. Someone threw out a tweet. Sorry, I don't remember who you were. DeMarco's price went down 1,000. Like, that is rare from what was a top tier running back. So I think it's 2 things. I think it's maybe Mariota and the passing game kind of ascending to taking more percentage of those, offensive snaps to make them passes. And I think it's also that, Jacksonville's D is good. So that's something we need to account for every week now. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Delaney's always a play, pretty much how I view that offense. But other than that, I'm not loving anything again. Could you play the Titans D? No. Could you play the Jaguars D? Not really. So I just, I think this is kind of even in tournaments, maybe you could throw Corey Davis in there at 41, but if he gets Ramsey, he's toast. So, yeah, it's a tough matchup.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Kansas City, Philly, next one here. Finally, a game that actually has something to talk about.
Yeah, here we go.
Let's talk this Kansas City side. There's a big price bump for kind of a lot of the industry. Kansas City didn't get the price bump. Like, Hunt did, obviously. Alex Smith is still cheap. Tyreek Hill still moderately priced. Kelsey, I'm not really on Kelsey. I like the Smith-Hill stack here. I like the pairing. I'm kind of off Hunt. I'm going to go some other ways, but I like Hunt. I like Tyreek Hill, and I like Alex Smith this week.
I certainly don't think you're going to sneak Kareem Hunt by anybody, but Philly. Oh, they were at home last week, right?
No, they're on the road.
They were on the road.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins made him look. But, no Darby. Like, it's just I don't see – I don't know. The front seven will have to make up for the secondary. I just don't think the secondary is going to be able to hang with Hill.
I think, Travis Kelce is an interesting play just because of last week. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him. So I kind of like that. I kind of like Kareem Hunt. Tyreek Hill – he kind of got banged up at the end of that game.
It's cramps, man. Just cramps. Take a banana, get a drink of water. He's back in.
All right. Well, I'm not loving him this week. I think he's a fine play if you want to go that route, but I'm not in on him. That was Alex Smith's best game of his career. So I don't think that's going to be happening again anytime soon. There aren't going to be that many yards to go around in general. And I think they kind of get back to what they were last year starting in this game, which is, Travis Kelce being the main guy in this offense. I think that's when it starts to go back to normal here. So I like Hunt, especially with both of his prices still under 7K on DK and, under 8K on FanDuel. So I think he's still a live play. You're just not going to – it's going to be kind of chalky. So, yeah.
Yeah. Looking at quarterback pricing on DK this week, like it's kind of a total turnaround for me. I'm looking to pay up. Like there's no cheap quarterbacks that I'm really enamored with outside of Smith, who's below 6K. Like none of those other guys below 6K I really like.
Uh,
Like Winston's as close as like
I
I'll
think
go to being below 6K.
I think you can take a shot with Goff. I really do. In tournaments, I think you can sort of take a shot with Cutler. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be really hard to make up the points with Brady, Breeze, Ryan, and Rodgers pretty much all in good matchups. So yeah, I tend to agree there. I like Russell Wilson as well. So really, those top few, and you got Carr against the Jets. I mean, it's really tough to pay down, and that's kind of why we're just like speeding through these other ones because it's like these are not the games that are going to win you significant, money.
Yeah.
But I do think Hill, Hunt, and Kelsey are all in play.
Yep. Chiefs defense, I know they lost Eric Berry. They're actually pretty cheap on DK. They're 2,900, and they're always a threat to get a special teams touchdown, and they've always been much better at Arrowhead. They're a GPP shot for me. I don't mind using them at 29 on DK. FanDuel, I'll go other ways because the Ravens are only 47.
Yeah, I agree with you. Nelson Aguilar looked good last week. I know he kind of had that fluky touchdown, but 6 of 8 targets, 86 yards. Like he had other good plays in that game. They're still trying to get him involved in that short passing game. So I would take a stab on him with DK. I think he's sort of that yak guy that could break a long touchdown. So I don't think that was totally fluky by him.
Yeah, I don't either. The rest of it, I mean, Zach Ertz is back up in price where he kind of should be with his
Yeah.
basically his performance over the last 8 weeks.
Mhm.
I mean, Kansas City's good against tight ends. There's
Yeah,
what else to
exactly.
put it? I just don't. I'm not going that route.
You could, but there's no deal like there was week 1, especially on DK. So, yeah, it's kind of way different now.
Let's go New Orleans, New England. This is a spot where there's just a ton of potential. Highest total on the board. You got basically New England offense that didn't do much in week 1, taking on a New Orleans secondary that just got shredded by Sam Bradford. Let's start with the New England side heading in here. They're basically touchdown favorites on the road. Numerous ways to go. Let's start with kind of the more obvious guys and kind of the guys that are expensive. I mean, what's your Brandon Cooks this week? I mean, are you kind of on board with the narrative and getting exposure? Do you think you're kind of leaning maybe a different way?
I'm on the narrative that Brandon Cooks is good and the Saints are not. And I love Tom Brady. So that's where I'm at with that. I don't really care about the revenge stuff. He's going to be electric in this offense. He was last week. He just got 3 pass interferences and people held on to him instead of letting him get open. So, the numbers are going to be huge for him this year. Gronk, I'm all in. He's 1,300 cheaper than Cooks on DK. I think that's pretty easy move to go Gronk here. I think Gronk is like the cash game play, of the week, especially at tight end there. He's more expensive on FanDuel, 8,100. So I think, him and Cooks on FanDuel are both pretty interesting. Gronk is the clear play for me here.
Yeah, this is a Gronk week for me as well. I like Chris Hogan after watching kind of what Adam Thielen did. I think Hogan can play that type of role this week. I definitely like him more on DraftKings, where the PPR site is much more in play. I also like James White at 4K. This is a guy who led the Patriots in snaps in week 1, had 13 touches, 5 targets in the air. I mean, obviously we know he's going to get 5 to 6 targets a game in this passing attack, but if you can get 10 to 12 rushing attempts as well and get me like 45, 50 yards on the ground, this is going to be a well-oiled machine this week. We're going to see a Patriots offense that we were supposed to see. I mean, this is going to be gold. So New Orleans 32nd DVOA against running backs in the passing game last year. We saw, Dalvin Cook have a little bit of an option in week 1. So 4K on DraftKings, I don't mind him if you want to go a different exposure route to this game.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think Brady's cash. I just think this is a pretty easy game for the Patriots. I'm a little I'm not worried. I'm going to go all in on the Patriots this week. I think they're going to be chalky. You know what I mean? Like I think there's going to be super high exposure to this game, and it's like after they looked really bad. So it's kind of like they looked bad, but it's not going to affect their ownership at all, which is going to be kind of a bummer. You know what I mean? I don't think there's going to be any type of edge in this game. Is kind of my point, you know? So I love this team. I think they're all cash. I just don't think you're sneaking it by anyone. In terms of the Saints, what are you looking at in terms of passing like targets?
I mean, I like Breeze. Like you said, I mean, I think Breeze is definitely the lower ownership play of this game, but probably not by much. But I could see it being a 10-15% swing even if people really love Brady and pay up for Brady. But we have to also remember that Rodgers and Matt Ryan are dueling off on Sunday night, and that's another game that's really going to come secondhand in terms of ownership. So for me, New England's one of those teams that always, they're always taking out your best player. They took out Travis Kelce last week. That's just what they do. They're going to look to get Michael Thomas and kind of, blanket him. For me, I think Ted Ginn, Kobe Fleener, I don't have a problem going back to this week. I liked what I saw week one. The pass catching backs, Kamara, Ingram, 11 targets. We just saw New England get ripped apart by the passing game. I mean, I don't see why that can't happen. And Kamara, if you want GPP and you want to go 1 p.m. only, you want to go main and be different and get exposure, I think Kamara is still going to be low owned.
I always laugh about the rookie players entering the league and people saying that's the tough. No, it's tough when it's year 2 and people are adjusting to you and have film on you. Like, welcome to the league, Michael Thomas. You're going to be getting crazy coverage your way the entire season. So I totally agree with that, especially with Malcolm Butler and some extra coverage. I'm with you. I'm looking at Ginn here, 4,800 on DK. Maybe, a little Fleener again, only 31, so he didn't bump up in price, even though he looked really good. And as you mentioned, Alvin Kamara, I was shocked. That was honestly the most shocking thing of week one, how many snaps he got, with Ingram and Peterson just sitting on the sideline. I was legitimately shocked. He's going to be a part of this offense, and I think he's a very, very interesting play at 3,500 in this type of game.
What are you doing with Breeze this week? Are you just going to get some exposure?
Oh, yeah, I'm getting exposure. I just don't love a lot of the stacking pieces. So I'll probably use Ginn. I'll probably use Fleener in my lineups, but I won't use Michael Thomas. So I'll use Breeze, and then I'll come around with Gronk or Cooks on the other side.
Yeah, it's definitely a game stack. I mean, there's definitely pieces elsewhere to make yourself contrarian. So Don't be afraid to just play this one because the ownership's going to be high. There's different ways you can go elsewhere.
Right.
Let's move on here. Pittsburgh, Minnesota. Kind of a Pittsburgh team that let a lot of people down last week. 2 freaking Jesse James touchdowns. Le'Veon Bell not basically getting a touch for an entire first quarter. They're back at home. Minnesota's a defense I don't usually like to target, but I could still see Pittsburgh hanging 30+ actually here this week.
Yeah, but are you using Le'Veon Bell at 9,800 against the Vikings?
Probably not. I'm going to have a few shares. I'm not. I like Martavis Bryant this week, especially if Xavier Rhodes is on Brown. That's just my share. I don't like Roethlisberger. I don't like a lot of pieces, but I can kind of see it happening where I think Bryant's intriguing. I still think a Bell's share or two is possible. I don't know. There isn't a lot here. I think there's other teams I can go with that all have the same implied total.
Fool me once, hold out Le'Veon Bell. Shame on me. Fool me twice? No way, man. I mean, I could see Le'Veon Bell's Le'Veon Bell. I'm willing to take the loss this week just based on how he looked last week, based on him coming in off the holdout with no preseason, nothing, no practice at all. So it could take a few weeks, and this is this is a tough defense. This isn't Saints defense. So I'm taking the week off from Bell on DraftKings. FanDuel, I'll definitely throw some shares at him. 9,800 though. Why is he 9,800? I don't understand why he would be 9,800 in this matchup. But I'm kind of looking at the receivers here. Brown has a tough matchup, but he's Antonio Brown. I'm fine with paying that 9,400. Martavis Bryant on both sites. Let's do it. I'm in. I'll run it again. He's that type of guy. I'm not afraid of good corner matchups with him. He's a freak of nature.
Yeah, no, I am too. And on the Minnesota side, they're on the road, just a 20.25 team total. It's not all that appealing, but I can see going back to the well with Thielen and Diggs. I think they'll draw some ownership just because of recency bias. Um, Pittsburgh's defense, I think you mainly are going to attack them through the air this year. I don't think you're going to attack them on the ground. So obviously, I'm not on Cook. But I do like Thielen and Diggs once again here. And I do like Rudolph. I think Rudolph's a sneaky play.
Oh, see, I love Dalvin at 5,900. I think that's a steal of a deal. FanDuel's a little different just because pricing's a little more condensed, but 5,900 for DK. I think he's just going to get enough touches, as we saw. If he gets 20 touches, and he's going to be able to be a guy who can catch out of the backfield. So I could see 4 or 5 catches. If he gets me 14, 15 points, that's not great, but it'll do at 59. There's other guys we'll probably talk about that are probably better values in that range, which is probably what you're getting towards. But I do like Dalvin.
I don't hate it.
We're
getting in that range here. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a few other guys that are probably better.
Yeah. Let's talk Tampa Bay, Chicago. Tampa Bay is actually one of my favorite pivot teams of the week. Especially when you look at Mike Evans and what his price is over at DK. I just think 7,700 for a guy of Mike Evans' status, that's just too cheap for me. And I like the Winston pairing. I like Deshaun Jackson as the GPP dart throw. And I like the fact that Jackson's there for Evans. I mean, it was Adam Humphries there last year who was the wide receiver too. I mean, Cameron Brate has shown that he has an ability to score. So I think this is a good team. I mean, Chicago's defense, they allowed over 300 yards to Matt Ryan. He did only throw 1 touchdown. But Tampa Bay at home, 25 team total. No Doug Martin. I think Winston airs it out a little bit here. I think this is a good spot for this team. I don't think they're going to be extremely high owned.
And your boy Jaquiz Rodgers, 4,400.
I'm not going Rodgers.
No? Okay. No. All right. Well, I just think there's a lot of value. Like you mentioned, Mike Evans shouldn't be 7,700. I don't care if the Bears defense is improved. Deshaun Jackson, all these guys are potential cash plays for me, especially Winston. Those 3 are really the guys I'm focusing on. Cameron Brate at 3K, sure. Yeah. I love O.J. Howard, but he's kind of a developmental guy in the passing game. I think they're going to use Brate. It's really hard for tight ends in the passing game to break through against the incumbent. We're seeing that with Hunter Henry in year 2 now, with his 37-year-old Antonio Gates. It's hard to break through as a young tight end, so in that role. So I think we're going to see Cameron Brate, and I'm in 3K, sure.
And Winston last year in wins, 66% of his passes were completed, 99.5 quarterback rating, and they're 7-point favorites.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good nugget right there. So I think we're going pretty hard at Evans and Winston here.
Bucs defense, whole match against the Bears.
Oh yeah. That's one of the best plays on the board. We haven't seen much of this Bucs D, but they obviously got the safety from the Broncos. They have McCoy. They have some pretty nice linebackers, so Bears don't really have much of anything. They don't have anything. They're a terrible offense.
Defense last year, 6th most fantasy points on the season total. So not a bad defense there, not a bad scoring fantasy defense. 2,900 on DK. 3,200 on DK. You want to be a little bit different?
Definitely. Yeah, I'm with you.
So we don't need to talk Chicago, do we? Or do you want to? I mean, Jordan Howard, Cohen, I guess they're talking points. I'm not going that way this week, but we can talk about them.
I got a stat for you.
Bring it on.
You know how much Tariq Cohen weighs?
How much?
179 pounds. You know what that means?
What?
He's literally 100% not going to stay healthy. There's 0% this guy stays healthy. What is everyone else watching? Are you not seeing this little minion running around? He's going to get decapitated. What? No, he's not Darren Sproles. Stop. The end. Done.
You're letting everyone else go back down that road if they want to.
Yeah, no. Stop it. Fine, he'll get some targets, but he's not going to last, half the season if they keep using him like this. I don't envision them. There's no way they're going to game plan 20 touches for a 179-pound running back. You can't do that. That's like we were talking about JJ Nelson. You can't give JJ Nelson 8 targets a game. You can't do that. You can't do that. So anyway, all right, let's move on to another game.
Yeah, no Bears. Chargers, Dolphins over in Los Angeles. It's going to get me – I've been writing up San Diego for most of this week instead of Los Angeles, and it's pissed me off. But let's talk Chargers here first. Keenan Allen's one of my favorite plays on the board, just given his price tag. He's 5,800 on DK. He was up in 7K range on DraftKings, 71. I like him more on PPR sites. Obviously, he found the end zone against Denver, but 10 targets. I mean, this is kind of what this guy's going to get week in and week out. I mean, against the Dolphins team that allowed the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers last year, 25 implied total. I just think Keenan Allen at 5,800 is just such a bargain.
Yeah, I do think he's a good play. And I'm not a Tyrell Williams guy, but he's going to be a sneaky play this year too, just because Mike Williams is hurt and he's got that deep roll unlock. So I think he's a really sneaky guy. I like this Chargers defense or Chargers offense in general. Melvin Gordon, not really loving that tight end situation. That's a really weird spot, but
they can both go to hell.
Yeah. Allen and Tyrell, though, are really good plays, I think. And I wouldn't be afraid to play either in pretty much any format. Rivers, I don't love him, but at 5,800, if we're talking about sub 6K guys, I like him. And he's only 7K on FanDuel. I mean, that is a deal. So if you're looking to pay down on FanDuel, he's really the only option on the board for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Rivers is in play. I kind of glossed over him when I was mentioning some of those other guys. But yeah, 7K and FanDuel, I really like that price because he's around Kaiser. I know Simeon had a good week. Flacco, Bortles, those are guys that you don't want to use. Yeah, Rivers is an interesting guy this week. I think the Chargers, offense overall is really appealing. On the Miami side, I like Jay Ajayi's price. I think in terms of workload, I'm a little bit iffy in seeing what we get on Miami this week. I just don't know how the game's going to go. I don't know, man. I
you
don't
said know it. You said it best, and we could have just moved on after that. I like Jay Ajayi's price, and that's all there really is to say. We don't know. There's a lot of unknowns. Jay Cutler starting at quarterback, which is something we've never seen. I think it's going to be pretty much impossible to project this out before we get some game action of what this team looks like. So I'll fire away with Parker. Landry could be an interesting guy if the Chargers get way ahead. But other than, I think they're just tournaments. I like Ajayi's price as well. So tournaments for me.
Yeah, it's hard to make a move. We'll get to Ty Montgomery later tonight. He's going to be a popular staple. Oakland, New York, this is a huge favorite here for Oakland at home against the Jets defense that just allowed 140 yards on the ground to Buffalo. Marshawn Lynch is pretty cheap. He didn't play a lot of snaps, but when he was on the field, he was getting touches. His touches last week, 19. Not bad. I think he's a decent RB2. I think 15 to 20 touches behind this line. And it was pretty clear that Oakland was going to try and work on the red zone passing game and get the ball to Cooper. But for me, over the span of time, they got to use Lynch in the red zone behind this offensive line.
Lynch is very good still. I mean, any doubts we had are gone. He made some sick runs, especially, I think everyone saw that third down run where he was going to get tackled behind the line of scrimmage, made a classic Lynch move and then fell across. So, yeah, Lynch is back. I'm okay with him at 6K. People are going to look at Cooper's week 1 performance and think of that as a bad thing. I thought it was a great thing. 13 targets, 4 red zone targets. Sign me up. If he gets that every week, he's going to have 1,500 receiving yards this year. So I think we're looking at another big week. Crabtree's a great play as well. This is cash for me. Carr's not cash just because of the other quarterbacks. Cooper, Crabtree, thumbs up on both. Jared Cook at 33, sure. More of a tournament guy for me, though.
Yep, I was just about to break into him. He caught all 5 targets in week 1, 56 yards. going up against a Jets team that obviously Charles Clay just torched them. But this is a different offense because Clay was basically Tyrod's safety blanket. Jared Cook is not Derek Carr's safety blanket. So at 3,300 on DK, I can see it. I mean, just given the fact that the total's there. I mean, if he gets that touchdown with 50 yards and a couple of receptions, I mean, that's money from a tight end who's 3,300.
And Jermaine Kearse.
Stop, Russ. Let's move on.
9 targets. 3,900. If you're doing Carr, Cooper, Crabtree stack, you might want to throw in a Kearse or Robbie Anderson on the other side. Like if you're making 20 lineups, 20 Raider stack lineups, you might want to throw some Jets receivers in there. Other than that, yeah, staying away from the Jets.
Yeah. Let's move on here. Denver and Dallas in Mile High. Ezekiel Elliott, he kind of jumped out at me when pricing came out this week. FanDuel, don't love him that much. 7,800 on DraftKings, though I have some appeal here just because
it's Zeke Elliott and he's filthy. And
but this Denver team, I know Melvin Gordon didn't have the best efficiency game, but like San Diego's line's banged up once again. Dallas's is not. It's still a top 10 line. He's going to get 25, 30 touches, like no matter how this game goes. And
this is, I don't know who's commentating this game, but I feel like this is a Jim Nantz, Zeke Elliott running 70-yard touchdown like play. Like I can just hear it. If Jim Nantz is doing this game, like book it 70-yard touchdown. But yeah, I just don't think Denver's D is as good this year than they'd been in previous years. You know, they're kind of getting older. They haven't really replaced or, you know, gotten any younger guys. And they lost TJ Ward. As I mentioned, he's on the Broncos now. They're kind of banged up a little bit. They still have Von Miller, but this Dallas line's for real. I like him. He's a cash play for me. I agree.
22 DK points last time against New York, and that was on 29 touches. And New York's defense, I mean, we've talked about them and being solid. So do you like him on draft or on FanDuel at 87?
Yeah, I like him in all formats, actually. I'm not afraid of Denver's D as much as I used to. So, yeah.
Passing game, no for me going up against Denver. The Denver defense is still passing game wise. I'm not targeting.
Secondary, I totally ignore that. Secondary, still very worried about. Running game, I think you can exploit.
Yeah. Let's go with the Denver side. I have interest in basically one guy, and that's Emmanuel Sanders this week, and we talked about him before the show. He's cheap, saw 24% of the targets in 2016. He's underpriced. Dallas 18th against wide receiver twos last year. I know they looked good against New York, but I think anyone actually defense that played New York week 1 would have looked good. 2 random Benny Fowler touchdowns. I mean, it's things are going to go Sanders' way. He's going to be a guy who catches 80 balls up over 1,000 yards and 6-7 touchdowns for me this year.
Absolutely. So I like Sanders. I think he's a sneaky play. Never seems to get that ownership even in good matchups. So signing up for him. I don't mind Demaryius either. We just talked about, as we talked about before the show, it's just hard to get good ownership on him even now because people just know his name so much more than Sanders. And, that does matter for ownership, especially in those huge tournaments. So I think Sanders is the interesting play there.
Yeah. Let's move on here. Rams and Redskins. Washington looked god-awful week 1. That was kind of surprising to me. I pushed a little bit more of my chips into Kirk Cousins' table than I should have. Doxson's still banged up. Jameson Crowder didn't look great. Terrell Pryor, he was the guy. I mean, he was gunning for Terrell Pryor. I still like Pryor here.
Yep. And I don't like Pryor, but I love the targets he's getting. If he's going to get 10 targets a week, we got to just, play him. So $6K for a wide receiver 1 on a team, with a pass first offense, I think we gotta go back to that one. Watkins' usage was kind of worrisome for his upside. They didn't really take many deep shots with him. They kind of just used him as a possession guy, which I think he can still break big passes. But, week to week, it's going to be really inconsistent. So I'm okay with him at 52, but he's purely a tournament guy. And then Jordan Reed's still hurt. So it's really tough to gauge how much you want to get of him. I guess he's a tournament play just because of his upside, but the Rams D looked really good again, and they're going to be at home. This could be a really good start for the Rams. I'm interested in Jared Goff at 5,100, as I mentioned. Not touching him on FanDuel just because you have Rivers there, but on DK, if you're looking to go down, I think he could get 300 yards again.
Yeah, I'm definitely not disagreeing with you.
No, you are. You can disagree.
No. I think
that's a hot. That's a hot take. That's not.
I think Goff could have a solid game again. I think he did look good, and I know people. There's going to be the people that go, "It's the Colts." It's that defense that there's no Devontae Davis. They're not even good anyway. With Devontae Davis, that defense is awful. But I do think Los Angeles. I think Goff is going to be a guy who improves. I mean, you and I we're talking over the weekend and kind of putting him in tiers, and we think he could be a tier 2 guy over time. I mean, I'm not against it. I don't know if I'm just going that route this week. There's
fair enough. Yeah, I also came into the season very against what the Redskins were. I think not like politically. I just mean in general. I just mean like their team.
Change your name, goddammit.
I am a quarter Native American, but I just think their team is not very well constructed. Their running backs are not very good, and their receivers I don't think are very good, especially with Josh Doxson still hurt. So, like, I don't know what's good about their team. Their defense isn't that good. They're just not a good team. And the Rams are, maybe Aaron Donald will play this week. If they do, I'm in on the Rams D again.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Washington outside of Pryor, I like him on the Rams side. You can get me to toss in a Goff share, especially in a 4 p.m. only slate. Outside of that, nothing for me.
Fair enough.
Gurley still didn't look great for me. The volume was there. He still didn't look that appealing.
He didn't look great. I'm running out of excuses here, Todd. We can't be the next T-Rich here, buddy. I already went through that.
What could happen is Indy will send you a first-round pick for him, and we'll take him.
Man, I'm really getting scared. I already went through this with Trent Richardson, and it was very painful for me. I don't want this to happen again. He did look good out of the backfield. 5 or 6 targets caught, and he made some big plays. He just needs some lanes, and he's not getting any. I mean, Malcolm Brown didn't look any better. Behind him, 7 carries for 6 yards, but Todd's got to get more, yards after contact and stuff. This isn't good. You're not going to be the feature back if you're running for 2 yards a carry. So not great, Bob.
Let's move on. Seattle, San Francisco. Is Seattle possibly going to be overlooked this week just because of how bad they played and because of all the other offenses that we've already kind of talked about, like in Atlanta, who's next, in New Orleans? Like 2018 total here, that offensive line is absolute crap still. The running backs, it's unclear. Thomas Rawls is back. I can't even bank on him getting 15 and 20 touches this week. For me, it's Wilson Baldwin. I think they're interesting. I think you can do a Seattle stack of like Paul Richardson. There you go, bud. Paul Richardson.
Yeah, baby.
Baldwin and Wilson, and you're going to get them at sub 15% ownership.
I think you do a full. What do they call it when you just play like 5 guys from one team?
The onslaught.
I think this is a Seahawks onslaught week. I really do. I think you can put that together with, a few guys from that Saints-Patriots game and the Packers-Falcons game. I love Wilson. I think he's going to be at great ownership this week in a great matchup. I understand the offensive line concerns. I think you can go Doug Baldwin in cash. I think, Jimmy Graham coming off a game where the passes he got were when he was blocking and they needed to dump it off before Wilson got sacked. If he runs some routes, I love this. This is what you look for. This is the ownership you're looking for with contrarian percentages, because people's hands are forced with those other 2 games. So yeah, I love this. I love the Seahawks team. I'm pretty much in on everyone. Other than the running game, I don't really love what's going on there. But the passing game, I'm all in.
Yep. No, I'm with you. San Francisco, no thanks to any of these guys.
No thanks.
I like Garcon some weeks. I'm not going to like him this week.
Yeah, and Seahawks D is something I'm talking about with that onslaught. This could be 35-0. So yeah, let's do it.
I'm with you there. Let's last game here of the main slate, Atlanta, Green Bay. We get a Sunday night game. Last week I had zero interest basically in that game. This one, it's going to be a game changer. There's going to be a lot of tournament moves from this game. Let's start with the Atlanta side here first. They're 3-point favorites. I like Matt Ryan this week. I'm curious to see what his ownership is. With Rodgers, with Breeze, with Brady. People don't love Matt Ryan. For me, I mean, I like the Julio Jones, Matt Ryan stack. I think, people are going to play a lot of Jones, but I think pairing Matt Ryan with him, he's potential for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I don't think that's a doubt this week.
Yeah, it reminds us of that early game last year where Julio just dismantled. Who was it? Who was that? I gotta look
for like 180.
I know we only got a few more minutes, but I gotta look this up. No, he went for 300.
Oh.
Early last year against someone in like a hat. He had like 260 and a half. It might have been Detroit. I'm sure the listeners know, and they're just like, what are you doing right now? Against Carolina. Yeah, 12 of 15 targets, 300 yards. I mean, Packers D is still bad.
Especially on the road.
They were at home last week where they look pretty good and can kind of hold it down. Yeah, Julio is cash. Jordy cash. Cobb looked great. Last week. I know he doesn't have the yards per reception. He was old Cobb again, so
targets were there.
Yeah, I'm in on that. Rodgers. I mean, we don't really have to hit on this game. I mean, it's just you playing everyone other than Hooper.
No Hooper for me. We talked about Hooper last week. We were on the Hooper train.
Yep, we were on
2 stiff arms, and that was his day. Like, that was it. I mean, I sent you a text with like an H and then like 40 O's and then PER because I had some Hooper. But yeah, this week I'll pass. Ty Montgomery, we need to talk about though.
Yes. 5,800 on DK, pretty cheap on FanDuel as well. He's the cash game running back of the week, and it's not even really close.
No, it's not. I mean, 19 DK points at 5,800 against the best rushing defense, I think, is Seattle. Just the fact that they made the Richardson trade. Touched the ball 23 times. He's going to carry this workload, I think, as long as he's healthy. That's going to be the thing. And we saw Atlanta struggle against pass-catching backs. They did it last year. They struggled week 1. This is going to be an area for him to exploit. So, I mean, both sites, I mean, he's going to be a guy I plug into a ton of lineups. I'm not going to worry about the ownership. I'll play him, and I'm just going to make different moves elsewhere. And like you said, Cobb, Nelson, they're all playable for me. I'm off of really Adams this year in general. I just think he's going to be the odd man out, kind of like Cobb was last year.
I still think he'll have his games, but I know what you mean by odd man out. I do think Cobb is going to, nuzzle in there and be like, hey, I was here first.
Do you like Bennett this week?
No, I don't. No. I think they brought in Lance Kendricks for a reason, and I think people underrate him and his snaps. Kendricks got a few catches and 4 targets last week. I think that's going to be a thorn in Bennett's side in terms of upside. So I like the receivers. I think Tevin Coleman is an interesting contrarian play at 5,300. He's not really a guy you trust, but in terms of tournament plays week to week, he's shown a few times last year he can get that 20 to 25 point upside in the right matchup, and this is the right matchup.
Yeah, this is going to be a barn burner. I mean, I could easily see them, putting up 50 plus points combined, and. Like you said, I mean, Coleman's intriguing. I don't have a lot of interest in Freeman at his price tag. I do wish Coleman was cheaper. I am going to say that to dive in. I think over 5K is a little bit pricey for me.
Agree. No, it's expensive, which makes it an ugly play, which makes me feel like you can get low ownership. Not a great price. I agree.
And I don't have any interest really in Gabriel or Sanu here.
No, neither do
I. Saw 9 targets last week, and that's not going to happen again. It's not.
No, I don't love that either. I agree.
So, yeah, I think Coleman's an interesting GPP option. Like you said, it's just there's a lot of options in that game. And, Green Bay, there's a lot of different ways to go, but you can certainly narrow it down.
Absolutely.
So that's it. That's going to wrap it up. We actually finished within an hour, so I'm proud of us. So we got some minutes to spare. So any wisdom words from Russell?
Tight end's a little tough this week, I believe. As mentioned, I do love Austin Hooper as a developmental guy, but the week to week's going to be ugly, man. There's going to be zeros like Hunter Henry had, so just be careful with that.
Yeah, I think my final words: the games in Kansas City, the games in Tampa Bay, Los Angeles, both Los Angeles teams. Those are my pivot moves from the other 3-4 games that we talked about being the ones that everyone's going to be after.
Yeah, I'm all in on Seattle too. I'm going to have a lot of exposure to them.
Yep. So hopefully a much better week 2. Hopefully it's a lot more process over just complete randomness and defense is putting up 20-plus points.
Listen, man, Austin Hooper was a great process. I don't know what you're talking about.
Hey, I was on it, man. I was on it. So. That's it. That's going to wrap it up for us. You can check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great week 2 content that is continuously rolling out. And good luck.